Welcome and thank you for standing by. For the duration of today's conference, all participants will be in a listen-only mode. I would like to inform all parties that today's conference is being recorded. If you have any objections, you may disconnect at this time. I would now like to turn the conference over to Edward Horowitz. Thank you. You may begin.
Thank you, operator, and good morning, everyone. As you can tell, we are convening this FirstNet Board quarterly meeting electronically and via webcast. 10 days ago, we were thinking carefully and long and hard about whether we should do so, and if we would have taken the decision today, it would have been an automatic no-brainer that we would be conducting this by webcast. And so before we get started, I would like to reach out and thank Jim Gwynn, who is FirstNet CIO, and their entire IT team, who have seamlessly moved us into this electronic mode, and also for the care and attention that they did in establishing the FirstNet internal network so that its employees can telework. And I just want to thank them publicly for all their hard work. During this time, we think about the FirstNet staff and, of course, our stakeholders in public safety. They are the tip of the spear for any whole of community response, and this is a true effort in order to confront this virus situation. As always, we keep public safety front of mind during our work. We will plan to re-engage the board in Los Angeles with the Los Angeles stakeholders in the future. We had a really good lineup scheduled there, and we look forward to meeting with them to learn about what FirstNet is doing in California, in particular LA. Before I get started, I just wanted to take this moment to reflect on the dedication of America's public safety community and why FirstNet exists. Our nation's responders have to be ready for anything. Whether you're in a small town or big cities, emergencies can happen anywhere at any time. And that is why FirstNet exists. The network has its roots in the terrorist attacks in 9/11, rallied the public safety community to push for more bandwidth on a national scale for the communications needs. And then in the years that followed, they pushed for the legislation in Congress, the establishment of a bill that created FirstNet. And ever since FirstNet has been established, these efforts, their work, has been codified and reinforced by having to deal with major disasters, whether it's hurricanes or tornadoes, etc. Technology has also evolved with the arrival of the smartphone and mobile data applications, and as we saw with emergencies such as the Boston Marathon and Florence and the hurricanes in Florida and the forest fires in California, data is playing an increasing critical role in keeping the public safe. And now, FirstNet is reality, and public safety is making use of their network to stay connected and be prepared for any situation. This is a national emergency. An emergency on a national scale drives home the need for a dedicated nationwide network for priority and preemption to help public safety communicate from coast to coast, border to border, and everywhere in between. We are proud to support them in their life-saving work, and I would like to also use this moment in time to congratulate Ed Parkinson on being named CEO and Executive Director of the FirstNet Authority. This has been a long journey for everyone. And throughout this period, we have used a number of models to divide business and governance rules and responsibilities to members of the leadership team. In particular, I want to thank Jeff Bratcher for his consistent assumption of whatever was required to assure that the FirstNet Authority had the necessary delegations in place. I would also like to give a shout out to Lisa Casillas for stepping up and onto this moving train going 60 miles an hour. FirstNet is a growth company. As such, its leadership profile needs to include a strong outward-facing executive, a strong internal-facing executive, and a strong technology and innovation individual. And now we have that formally into place. I would also like to welcome Janelle Smith as a new board secretary, and she comes over from FEMA, where she was an attorney for a number of years, and over the next few months, she will, with Jennifer Watt's assistance, transition into the role and take over full board responsibilities. And if we were all together in a room and we had a TV camera present, you would see me and Ed Parkinson stand up and ask Jennifer Watts to please stand up and to receive a plaque, which is sitting on the desk in Ed Parkinson's office. And the plaque reads, "For Jennifer Watts and her exemplary performance and dedication to service as acting board secretary to the First Responder Network Board Authority Board, ensuring efficiency and success for all involved." And we would all applaud and we would smile for Jennifer. So Jennifer, thank you for stepping in and taking on these responsibilities. So I don't know if we can have a cheer, but they'll say, hip hip hooray.
Yeah. Hip hip, hip hip hooray.
Thank you. Jennifer, stop blushing. So for today's agenda, today we will hear a Public Safety Committee update from the PSAC's chair, Todd Early, a presentation of and a vote on a board resolution 104, which is revising the PSAC's charter slightly. We get an advocacy update, a network and technology update, finance updates, and then we'll have closing remarks from Ed Parkinson and Jack Blatcher, followed by a vote to adjourn. I would like, as we start today's meeting, I would like to ask Acting Board Secretary Jennifer Watts to call the roll for the board and confirm that each committee has a quorum. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. We'll start roll. Edward Horowitz.
Here.
Richard Stanek.
Here.
Richard Carrizzo.
Here.
Welton Chase.
Here.
Neil Cox.
Here.
Brian Crawford.
Here.
Vince DeLaurentis.
Here.
Bradley Hayes. Billy Hughes.
Here.
Karima Holmes. Chip Osterthaler.
Here.
Paul Patrick.
Here.
Matt Flinkard.
Here.
David Zolette. Okay, Mr. Chair, we do have a quorum for the board as well as for all four committees.
Thank you. Perhaps someone could just text David and Karima to see if they're on mute and didn't realize that when they acknowledged their presence. Thank you. Before we go on to the minute, Jennifer, would you please read a statement acknowledging conflicts of interest or not?
Oh, certainly. Prior to participating in the FirstNet Authority Combined Board and Committees meeting today, the board members have reviewed the agenda as well as the conflict of interest guidance provided by the Ethics Law and Program Division of the Department of Commerce Office of General Counsel regarding the conflict of interest standards that apply to the board members. All board members have responded prior to today's meeting that they do not have a conflict and will not need to recuse themselves from participation in any portion of this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. Now we turn to the minutes. Each member of the committee and board has before him or her the minutes of our December meeting. Are there any additions or corrections to those minutes at this time? Hearing none, I'll take a motion that we accept the minute.
Quizzo motions.
I'll second Patrick. Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, indicate nay. Abstentions? Thank you. The December meeting minutes are accepted. Madam Secretary, please make the minutes available to the public following this meeting. The next item on our agenda is an update from the Public Safety Advisory Committee, and I'm pleased to welcome Todd Early, Chair of the Executive Committee, to provide the updates. Todd.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good morning, board members. I appreciate the opportunity to once again provide you an update on the work that the PSAC has been doing. Since we last met at the end of 2019, the PSAC held an in-person meeting here in Austin, Texas. And at that meeting, we provided direct feedback on several roadmap domains and the 2020 investment priorities to ensure that they best meet the needs of our first responders. We also learned about the latest network product and service offerings and received updates from FirstNet AT&T leadership. To start 2020, the PSAC's Tribal Working Group has resumed their monthly teleconferences. They also launched roadmap domain teams to provide FirstNet Authority an additional tribal-specific voice on the voice communications and coverage and capacity domains that we've all heard a lot about. As you know, tribal lands and public safety have especially unique challenges with regards to those two topics, and so we wanted to offer our Tribal Working Group the opportunity to weigh in and provide feedback to guide network investment and enhancement decisions. The PSAC EC also resumed its monthly teleconference cadence with the PSAC. And we're very appreciative of the support of our board members and authority leadership that join us on a regular basis. I will tell you that means a lot to the PSAC members and just really solidifies the importance of the partnership between the board and the authority and the importance of what the PSAC actually does. So thank you all for joining that as well. We launched our bi-monthly 2020 webinar series, and in January participated in the 200-level engagement on the FirstNet Core, learning more about its current and future capabilities, and weighed in on engagement materials developed about the Core from the authority's public safety advocacy team, and we utilize Poll Everywhere for that. The PSAC's making a renewed concerted effort with its 2020 webinars to align to what PSA is doing in the field with the public safety and provide valuable data to educate and inform the FirstNet Authority in its roadmap. Next slide, please. The Executive Committee and I have worked really closely over the last several months with the FirstNet Authority leadership to consider ways to improve operations to best support the FirstNet network, the FirstNet Authority, and the first responder community. The bullets that you see here on the slide demonstrate a few updates to the PSAC charter and thus operations that we feel will ensure the PSAC's work is in line with the public safety community and best able to meet our mission to provide guidance and recommendations to the FirstNet Authority. So we recommended, as you see here, the addition of the National Association of EMS Physicians to the PSAC membership. We're really excited and thrilled about this prospect of adding the ER doctors' expertise and work to the PSAC roster. As you know, they're very, very involved in patient care and in telehealth, and we really think this addition will really be a great aspect to the PSAC membership. We've also recommended increasing the PSAC Executive Committee, which is currently 5 members, up to 7 members. We feel that this will increase the leadership pool for the PSAC and really allow for some more flexibility and input by key PSAC associations at the leadership level. And I would like to take this time to thank my fellow EC members for their time and commitment during these discussions and suggestions really to help improve the overall operation of the PSAC. And then we've also recommended creating an operational users working group. In the same structure as our current tribal working group, this operational users working group will allow the PSAC to draw on the membership of the PSAC associations who are utilizing the FirstNet network in their operations and collect actionable feedback. We really feel that this is important to not only gain the expertise of all the associations, but to really also have discussions with those that are using this network to find out, their suggestions, what is working right, what improvements are needed, what innovative thinking and suggestions they have that could be applied to this network to affect all of our public safety first responders. So we really feel like that this operational users working group will really provide some very valuable and user information, really the same as was done in the previous board during the roundtable. We look forward to working with the authority and realizing these updates in the coming months. And I also want to thank you for your consideration of the Board Resolution 104 that's about to be discussed. But before I turn it back over to you, Mr. Chair, I'd just like to say there's a lot of work that goes behind the scenes from the PSAC, and a lot of things have to be done. And I want to publicly thank Kenzie Capiz and all of her support team that help us out on a daily basis and help keep the PSAC running and operationally. They do a great job, and I want to publicly thank them. And with that, Madam Secretary, Mr. Chair, I'll turn it back over to you for discussion on the resolution.
Thank you, Todd, for that update. And I would also add the fact that the PSAC and its leadership have really evolved over time as the FirstNet establishment and RFP and then implementation process has taken place. And I think that the recommendation to add the National Association of EMS Physicians is an excellent one and quite timely. And I think what we're finding is telemedicine and connectivity into emergency rooms and within hospitals itself is really proving to be an ability to leverage assets around this country on a national basis. So it's timely. The increase in the number of executive committee members from 5 to 7 really also reflects the degree by which the PSAC activities need to get expanded. And because, we're in operation, AT&T's got over 1.2 million and 11,000 agencies connected now, and the trajectory is quite strong. And tragically, and on one hand, and fortunately on another, the national issues we're dealing with today are really causing people who are on the fence thinking about whether FirstNet should be part of their operating plan or not. I think they are now strongly tilted towards adopting FirstNet. And adding an operational users working group, again, just reinforces the fact that we are at a stage, FirstNet is at a stage, where we are clearly in an adoption mode, but also we really need to be cognizant of the operational issues that the universe is facing, and having a specific operating users working group will provide the emphasis that is needed to make sure that we are covering some of the operational requirements and able to move ideas from the field throughout the communications network of FirstNet. So with that, does the board have any questions of Todd? Hearing none.
Mr. Chair, Rich Stanek.
Yes, Rich. Hi.
Thank you, Todd. So a number of your PSAC members are working professionals out in the public safety field, and with all that's been going on the last couple of weeks and into the foreseeable future, how is that affecting the work of PSAC? I know you guys sometimes meet in person, but that makes it really hard now, given COVID-19, as well as those are the first responders that are working on the front lines back in their agencies. What do you think about the work product and the workflow coming out of PSAC?
Thank you, Chair. Great question. I will just tell you that we've had discussions on remote work, and really just as we're doing this board today, I think we're all keeping eyes on the fact that some of the work may have to be done remotely. And our desire is to continue with our monthly and bi-monthly cadence of EC meetings, webinars, and then the meetings, just keeping our eyes on the forefront of this and making sure that we are allowing the folks to continue to do the great work that they're doing in the fight of this across the country, but also carrying on the work that's needed. And I think really after this is over, we're really going to gain a lot of valuable insight from public safety, and especially those who have utilized this network during this crisis that can help us gain the insights into how it helped them in their mission-critical operations, but also the things and innovative ideas that we can take forward and really have discussions on, with FirstNet Authority and their leadership in moving forward for this network for our first responders.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Anyone else have any questions of Todd or comments? Okay, so the board is now prepared to vote on Resolution 104, which is revision of the Public Safety Advisory Committee Charter. This resolution revises the PSAC Charter by adding a new member, increasing the number of members on the Executive Committee from 5 to 7, and adding an additional working group. Before we vote, are there any final questions or comments from the board? Okay, hearing none. Thank you. Now we're prepared to vote on the board resolution revision of the Public Safety Advisory Committee Charter. Jen, would you please read the operative language?
Okay, Board Resolution 104. Now therefore be it resolved that the FirstNet Authority Board, having reviewed the recommended revisions to the PSAC Charter, hereby adopts the revised and amended PSAC Charter as presented to the Board by FirstNet Authority Management, copy of which is attached hereto as Exhibit A.
Thank you. May I have a motion to approve Board Resolution 104?
This is Neil. I'll move it.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Paul Patrick, second.
Paul Patrick, second. Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. If opposed, indicate by saying nay. Are there any abstentions? Thank you, everyone. Madam Secretary, will you please make the following resolution available to the public following this meeting? And now we will turn our discussion over to Dave Buchanan to provide an advocacy update. And Dave, while you go through this, really please also share with us how your team is operating during this period of time.
Sure thing, Ed. Thanks for giving me a few minutes. I'm going to update you on what the Public Safety Advocacy team has accomplished since our last board meeting and talk to you a little bit about where we believe we're headed here in 2020. But I do want to start by saying thank you, Ed, for your comments earlier about the health pandemic that we know our first responders are dealing with. We have adjusted all of our engagements to reflect the new reality that our stakeholder community is operating and living in, and to accommodate the new demands that are on public safety and first responders. We've moved all of our in-person engagements either to an online or a virtual meeting, or we've moved them to a phone meeting, or we've rescheduled them to a later date. And only in very, very rare instances are we still finding ourselves in in-person meetings. We've made every effort to move everything we're doing to a virtual setting in order to minimize not just our impact of our employees during this time, but not to put any additional demands on public safety as they are doing their mission-critical assignments to keep the public safe during this. So I wanted to mention that up front, and thank you for mentioning that. Jen, as we move ahead to the next slide, I do want to talk a little bit about what we've accomplished to date since the last board meeting. You heard me describe our goals for 2020 in public safety advocacy. We're to be targeted with who we meet with, to make sure we're reaching first responders
and those who are operating on the network to be specific about what we're talking about and specific to our roadmap domains and specific to those operational needs that first responders and public safety are sharing with us about how they're using the network, and to be results-oriented, to make sure we're driving towards advocating for public safety so we can improve and enhance and invest in the network to best reflect their needs. And I'm pleased to announce, Chairman Horowitz and the board, that we are accomplishing those goals, and we're really moving forward in driving towards being targeted, being specific, and being results-oriented. You see here in this slide, since October 1 through mid-February, we've executed successfully 448 engagements in public safety in 52 states and territories, 13,000 stakeholders reached. And some of the results you see on the right-hand side, these are new improvements and enhancements made to the FirstNet network because of feedback we have received from first responders, updates to the uplift request tool, new mapping features, and a considerable amount of additional data now available on the network views and the network status tool to give first responders real-time access to network availability and performance, and an enhanced deployable processes. Our partner continues to roll forward their response operation group and the deployables there to be involved in helping make that an easier and enhanced process for public safety. These are improvements made just in the last 6 months, again, come directly from feedback we've obtained from first responders. So I think we're making an impact, and we're able to demonstrate these successes to public safety, which in turn then makes our work even more fruitful. On the next slide, you see, again, the breadth and depth of who we're meeting with to ensure that we're targeting those who are involved in public safety. You see the percentage of public safety discipline that are participating in our meetings. Over 50% are from the law enforcement, almost 50% from fire and EMS, executives, emergency communicators, emergency managers, and others. So we're reaching a broad array of public safety disciplines. And then you see on the right-hand side, we're also making sure we're hitting at all levels of government. 65% of our meeting attendees are from local governments, 58% are from state government. And we're ensuring that all levels of government, federal, tribal, state, local, as well as other stakeholders are reflected in our meetings. It's important for us not just to get to every state and territory, but to make sure we're hitting all disciplines and all levels of government inside those states. So I'm pleased with what we've accomplished already this year with being targeted on who we're meeting with. On the next slide, you can see an example of some of the associations and specific meetings that we've been able to successfully hold just this calendar year. We had our team members, and Chairman Horowitz, I'm going to ask Vice Chair Stanek to add a few remarks here in a second, but we've had our team deploying our outreach at the National Sheriff's Association, the major county sheriffs, the major city chiefs. You also see National Association of EMS Physicians, International Association of Fire Chiefs, the Metropolitan Fire Chiefs, as well as some of the 911 organizations like APCO and NENA, who had meetings earlier this year. So we've been able to robustly connect our subject matter experts to these professional associations and continue to leverage their leadership and expertise as we bring the FirstNet conversation to their organizations. Sheriff Stanek, I don't know if you wanted to add anything about what we're doing in those groups, but I wanted to take a minute to make sure you had a chance to make some comments here.
Yeah, just briefly. Thank you, Dave, board members, and the audience. You know, as chair of the Advocacy Committee, it's truly a pleasure to be able to work with Dave Buchanan and his team, and not just locally, but across the country, the SPOCs and others, the subject matter professionals, whether it's police, fire, EMS. They have been doing a phenomenal job. You just look at the numbers, and every time we have a chance at the board meeting to review the numbers, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of engagements in that 90-day, 120-day period between board meetings. These men and women are working really hard. We had said it yesterday during the board briefing, ever so briefly, that it's not a question of what is FirstNet anymore. It's more of a question of, well, how do I get it? Where do I get it? What's the connectivity? How do I get this in my organization? And Dave and his team have been doing a phenomenal job. And I'll never leave out their private sector partners, AT&T. They have stepped up as well. And nobody could predict what the last few weeks would bring or what the foreseeable future will bring with COVID-19. But this is one of the things I've been talking about during our conference calls weekly. We have about not just looking at natural man-made disasters as they occur across this country, but the day-to-day workings of FirstNet and the men and women in public safety. This is what FirstNet was provided for. What it's being built for is the day-to-day operations like we're seeing right now. And so I just wanted to say thank you to everyone for all the hard work they do, Dave and his team. I personally had a chance to go out to D.C. a couple weeks ago during the national and major county sheriffs conferences. It was a good turnout by FirstNet and AT&T staff. Continue to help educate and connect the nation's sheriffs into FirstNet. Thank you, Dave.
Thanks, Sheriff.
And I would like perhaps there's other members of the board that you've called upon and have really worked to support this effort. I know that Matt Slinkard chairs the technology committee of the major city chiefs, and maybe you have some things to say, Rich Grizzo. Brian Crawford, you're in a hospital environment right there in the center of things. Perhaps you may add a comment, and, of course, Paul Patrick. So.
Thank you. Good morning. This is Matt. I just want to echo a lot of the comments that the sheriff made and also say I think one of the biggest points that I'm seeing as we attend conferences and engage with others, whether it's at major county sheriffs or major city chiefs. Recently here in Houston, we had the privilege of hosting major city chiefs meeting in January, and the engagement, I'm seeing such a different level of discussion moving from, what is it, like others have said, to how do I engage, how do I deploy, and how do I get our first responders in the field the very best that we can to be responsive to our public and to our community and get the best tools out there on the front line that we can. And I think the committee is doing a great job. Dave and his team are doing an outstanding job in keeping up with the engagement, and I know that it's just going to continue full speed ahead, and we look forward to all of those future engagement opportunities.
Thanks, Matt.
This is Rich Grizzo. I don't think I could say anything more that Matt and the sheriff haven't said also of Dave and his team and all they provide for all of us as we're out there advocating for this system. It's kind of ironic that what's going on is creating now new buzz, which will then continue to help drive this into the future and provide it for what it was originally meant to be, and that's for public safety and the continuation of public safety driving it. And so I just want to thank everybody for all the work on this to make public safety better.
So, Mayor Hughes, I didn't call you out at the beginning, but I would say that you bring a perspective, not so much on our advocacy, of course you're part of that, but on how you are dealing with this pandemic as the head of the mayor's position in Gulfport.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I can report that Chicken Little is alive and well. For all the good information that is out there about this pandemic and the spread, there is an abundance of bad information, and it is inflaming tensions. People are on alert, on edge, and they're justified in doing so, but we need to make sure that good information is out there. And ultimately, with respect to first responders, this may be a test like we've never seen. We're obviously preparing for the worst internally, but hoping for the best. We'll probably land somewhere in between, but this situation, from what we're seeing and what y'all are seeing too, monitoring it, particularly first responders, we're anticipating as more testing becomes available, then the knowledge of how many people are truly infected is going to ramp up. The concern for most of us is hospitals being overrun, but also keeping our fire and police well so they don't get contaminated so they can respond, because if we have a situation where it runs through a department, you can find yourself with most of your force being down. And so we're talking at the federal and state level with the authorities with respect to the availability of activating folks who may be on retirement. This is probably more information than you want, but you may have to be able to pass some of this along to your officials as well, because there are strictures on people who are on retirement systems coming back to work. But in this emergency situation, if there are recently retired first responders who are still certified or qualified, you probably want to make plans to reactivate them if it's allowed, and if it's not allowed, get some emergency provisions passed by your legislatures. So we're stocking up and looking at this. My concern probably is for the medical community, and this can be where there's a test. And if we can get deployables out to some of these hospitals and centers who may not be on FirstNet or even aware of it right now to see what the capabilities are, if it becomes the case where beds are taken up and ramped up at an exponential factor like this disease has a tendency to spread, then there's going to be a need for ancillary buildings. We've already identified some hotels that can be some triage units or areas where we can have additional hospital beds set up. But I think the need for a reliable network communications medium like FirstNet could really shine in these situations in our communities, because the instantaneous need to communicate is going to be key, particularly if this persists longer than we think and supplies do get challenged as far as people are able to get supplies and food and those things in the stores. There's going to be a tendency toward panic and hysteria that is in check right now, but some people are having a hard time handling just the pressure mentally and being quarantined. So this is going to be something that's a hell of a learning curve. It is unprecedented in any of our lifetimes. And so, but this is going to be the opportunity for our first responders to shine, and I think our network to do the same. It couldn't be active at a better time.
Thank you, Mayor. I really do appreciate those comments, and the move towards bringing people out of retirement to be an auxiliary force is something I'm hearing for the first time. And to the extent that people are listening into this webcast and Dave and others will adopt this concept, at least sharing the concept, thank you very much for bringing that forward. Appreciate that very much.
Chairman
Anyone else? Yes, Paul.
Gotcha. Yeah, Paul Patrick, I just echo the comments, and also I'm living what Mayor Hughes is talking about as well, but to Dave and his team, the advocacy team, it's such an honor and privilege to be able to go out and also to be able to electronically support the concepts and have them support us as we do that. So I just didn't want to let the moment pass without thanking them, as others have, and as Chief Carrizo did as well, to say thank you so much, Dave, and let all of your team know how much I personally appreciate their help, and I'm sure the rest of us do.
Thank you, Paul.
You have one more slide?
Yes, I do. I wanted to move on to the next one and just talk about where we're headed in the future. Last year at this time we were talking about our National Roadmap Summit, where we were able to convene folks from around the country to talk about all of our roadmap domains. In 2020, in October, we started with a series of specific and targeted summits. We did a law enforcement and fire services leadership summit in October, and we have a series of them planned for this summer around the tribal community, the Emergency Communications Center Summit, the Emergency Medical Services, and the Emergency Management profession, to bring them similar to what we did with fire and EMS, specific and targeted dialogue around their operational use and need for the network, so we can capture that feedback, document it on our roadmap, make improvements, adjustments, enhancements to the network immediately with our partner and as well as inform our future investments. So we're looking forward to scheduling those and continue to plan those. Obviously, we are going to carefully move forward on scheduling anything until we and the rest of the world gets our footing on when we can schedule things in person. But in the meantime, we'll also be planning on how we will do these kind of meetings just as effectively virtually. So we won't miss a beat. We won't miss our timeline, Mr. Chairman. We're just going to have to be flexible and resilient on how we wind up delivering this. Last thing I want to leave you with is just this presents an opportunity for us. It is a challenge, obviously, for everybody, but it's an opportunity for us to bring the most relevant conversation to public safety and learn from public safety about this health pandemic, how they're performing, how they're operating, how they're using FirstNet during this time, and how we can be helpful to support them in those efforts. So we're looking forward to this challenge and want to continue to work very, very closely with our partner as we bring these conversations to the stakeholder community. I believe that's my last slide, and I just want to see if you had any other questions, Mr. Chairman, or anyone else before I turn it over.
So, Ted, I just wanted to footnote here. I think one of the opportunities going forward is, as time permits, that you start developing case studies that are based upon what organizations have done. For example, Mayor Hughes issued a press release on kind of a response update informing the city of Gulfport and its citizens where they can turn to for medical purposes, where they can turn to for emergency requirements that are not medical, and where are some of the shared resources. I'm sure that there are hundreds of examples of this, and to the extent that we can capture those and embed them in your conversations and presentations to exchange information going forward, I think that would be quite useful. I'm sure also there'll be lessons learned, just like you were learning from the apps that are out there now for uplift and prioritization and casting of single sign-on information. Again, that should be embedded in our conversations and our presentations going forward. That's kind of, I'll open it up to the board if they have anything else they'd like to add on this.
I would just tag on to that, Ed, and say our team, I should have mentioned this earlier, our team already is working to document best practices and case studies where we're seeing them and hearing them, and looking for opportunities to share those through an online medium with the stakeholder community as we find them. We think it's a responsibility we have in the public side of this public-private partnership to exercise our thought leadership in the public safety community, and as we see and document best practices and case studies, to be able to publish those and share them. We think that's an important role we can play, and we're already in the first steps of doing that, and we'll look forward to sharing that with you when we are able to document those.
Right.
Yeah, and I think this is Ed Parkinson, if I could just jump in just to echo Dave's comments. We're planning to work with AT&T in the coming weeks, as Dave mentioned, to really assist in data collection and education efforts. It's really up to us to understand how public safety is dealing with personnel deployment and obviously evolving operational demands that's being placed on them as a result of these ever-changing situations. And so we are in the planning stages right now to engage with public safety on a series of conference calls. We obviously are mindful of the fact how public safety is really focused on serving the communities in which they live and operate. And our goal is to gather information so that we can continue to provide additional information to folks all across the country. We can identify best practices and ensure that what folks are doing on the East Coast might be prevalent to folks on the West Coast and everywhere in between. It's important that we share best practices, we collect information that public safety is doing to assist in the fight in which we all find ourselves. So we're looking forward to engaging with public safety on those, and we'll have a bit more information about those conference calls in due course.
next up is Jeff Brasher, but before I turn to Jeff, Madam Secretary, can you please confirm that David Zillett and Karima Holmes have been on the call, present at the meeting?
Yes, board members Karima Holmes and David Zillett have actually been on the call since the beginning of the meeting.
Okay, thank you. With no other comments or questions for Dave, can I turn it over to Jeff, please?
Yeah, Ed, before Jeff talks, this is Neil Cox. Let me make a few comments, and then I'll turn it over to Jeff. Is that okay?
Absolutely.
Okay. This is Neil Cox. I'm the chair of the Network and Technology Committee, and I just wanted to chime in on what's being said about this network. Communications is the lifeblood of everything in society, and I think we're seeing that now more than ever with what's going on with the COVID-19. The way that this network was designed, engineered, and built, we should all take great pride in that, because right now there are other networks out there. One particular company has actually petitioned the FCC for additional spectrum from other companies. That's really nice, and the FCC will grant that, but still you have to have the infrastructure to make that work. Networks are now finding that there's tenfold video going through the networks that are causing problems. But we have built this network with our standalone core, with our own radios, with our own spectrum, and this is something that really demonstrates the foresight of everyone that has been associated with this project from day one, knowing that we needed our own standalone network that could survive any type of national disaster, whether it's man-made, environment, or whatever. This is something that we should take pride in the way that this network was built, designed, engineered to be given to our first responders. And now is the time when it really shows its value. And I'm going to turn it over to Jeff and to Mark, and they're going to go through how far we've come with this network and how we do the monitoring of this network so we don't get into any issues that others are having today. So with that, I'll turn it over to our Chief Technology and Communications Officer, Jeffrey Bratcher. Jeff?
Great. Thank you, Chairman Cox and Chairman Horowitz. Can you hear me okay?
I'm clear.
Great. Nice to be joining you from snowy Denver, Colorado here. Late spring snowstorm coming in. I'd like to go to the next slide, Jen. I'd like to start off on just sharing an update. We hosted the Network and Technology Committee in our Boulder, Colorado technology headquarters on February 13th. And we were focused with the Network and Technology Committee as well as some other board members to explore and provide strategic guidance to us on a wide array of topics, including the network deployment, our upcoming investments, some of the upcoming mission-critical services, enhancing and further developing our ecosystem, as well as the experience program that we're working on now. This slide kind of represents some of those main topics we discussed. On the left, we're talking the network deployment. And looking at the current state of the network deployment, one of the tenets, and I think Sheriff Stanek said it earlier as well, the committee continues to stress that the success will be achieved when this FirstNet network is embedded in all of public safety's response operations for their communication needs. And we're seeing that now with the COVID-19 response, and very pleased to see that. We're also seeing indicators that the applications and user solutions that differentiate FirstNet's service continues to grow in our apps catalog, and we've got some data on that coming up. A recent example we highlighted and discussed was a cloud-based, highly secure collaborative environment for an agency's video and data, regardless of the source of that video and data. And this service is accessible from multiple devices with video and data compiled from airborne drones, mobile devices, security cameras, and sensors, and that's being used today in several agencies by public safety. We've also got a fantastic view into the network deployment statistics as part of the contract with AT&T and with Richard Reed's team. We now have the capability of analyzing volumes and terabytes of data that is delivered to us on the state of the network deployment and how the network's operating and focused on our band 14 spectrum usage.
So we were pleased to provide updates to the committee on February 13th on how we're now able to analyze that data and some of the efforts we will be using that data with as we move into investments and expanding coverage. Touching on investments, we do have 2 active investments underway now with the deployables, and we've seen that to be a major differentiator on the FirstNet network, and especially most recently with the COVID-19 response. And I'll touch on that briefly in a minute. Support for planned events continues as well. We had the Super Bowl victory parade in Kansas City, go Chiefs, as well as major incidents in support of the coronavirus response. The second investment that we've brought forward this year is focused on that 5G capability. We want to ensure the FirstNet network is 5G ready. We are closely watching the wireless industry as they continue to build and roll out their 5G coverage and services. And as we've mentioned in previous board meetings, we want public safety not in the FirstNet network, not on that leading edge, but as fast followers following right along as those investments are made and taking advantage of those investments for the FirstNet network as well. In the near and the intermediate term, we see 5G as complementary to and not a replacement of the 4G LTE technologies. And the authority and the staff, we're heeding the guidance of the committee and the board to be 5G ready. And that's the goal of the first phase of our network enhancement for that investment. We're also excited. We have some mission-critical services that we'll be launching soon, built upon 3GPP open standards for mission-critical-based communications. And this will be integrated into the FirstNet network, and that continues to progress and has the potential to transform some of those direct public safety communications that they do every day. Last but not least on this slide, our ecosystem development activities can also continue to expand. We provided some updates in collaboration updates with our peers at NIST Public Safety Communications Research Program. We're supporting the final stages of their Tech to Protect Coding Challenge, and that's scheduled to culminate in some awards next quarter. Those will progress. The teams at NIST are working now on how they will address that with the current COVID-19, but we are looking forward to that progressing next quarter. And additionally, we also agreed to support some new open innovation challenges that will soon be launched, focused on augmented reality and the Internet of Things technologies. Chairman Cox, anything to add before I move to the next slide on that meeting we held in Boulder?
No, it was just a great session. I think it was well attended, and I really appreciate what you and your team did, Jeff.
Thank you. Jen, if we could go to the next slide. So this slide we discuss at every meeting, and it shows the current momentum of the FirstNet network and some of those key milestones related to our Band 14 deployment, end-user adoption, devices, applications, and other figures as reported by AT&T. These numbers show great progress in the 3 years since we awarded this contract to AT&T. It's astonishing. 3 years ago, in this month, March, we awarded this contract. And it was really 2 years ago in March of 18 when we launched the core and really began the Band 14 build-out across the country. The FirstNet Authority continues to validate the progress of this deployment and build-out and the services that are being added on a yearly basis now as part of that initial 6-year contract that we awarded and focused on those needs for public safety. But I think there's an even bigger story to tell here beyond the numbers shown here. Again, AT&T is hitting the marks and is still ahead of schedule on their, especially Band 14 coverage deployment. They're now reporting they're at 80% on that, on their contracted deployment for Band 14. They're pushing hard and continue to push hard on their deployment. But the bigger story is in the challenging environment that public safety is operating today in the response to the coronavirus. AT&T recently reported on a number of ways that this network FirstNet network is supporting directly public safety agencies and organizations across the country in their efforts to respond to COVID-19. And this is all the way from the local and county levels up through the state and federal levels. Agencies are using FirstNet to keep their personnel connected, many times with smartphones and Wi-Fi hotspots that leverage the power of the FirstNet network.
Other examples include support for mobile dispatching capabilities and the boosted connectivity to support testing at medical facilities for COVID-19. AT&T FirstNet has also deployed the deployable assets. They've optimized the network or provided FirstNet-ready devices to support quarantine zones, airports, emergency operation centers, and other public safety centers in areas across multiple states across the country. And in addition to that dedicated fleet of the FirstNet deployables, AT&T also has FirstNet liaisons that have been embedded with state and federal emergency operations centers to ensure the communication needs are being met. And Mr. Chairman Horowitz, as you talked about earlier, this is directly a result of having this nationwide network in place today that was built with direct public safety input going back over 10 years when they first started thinking about using broadband data for their mission-critical communications. And we carried that through with our early days of state consultation to the development of our objectives-based RFP, to our awarding the contract to AT&T, state plans. Again, public safety will continue and provide that direct input on this. They pushed on bringing the speed to market. They needed the network, and we're very pleased with how AT&T has done that. The key thing to this, providing that priority and preemption, and what I always highlight when I give these presentations, is originally the RFP envisioned a Band 14 only network for this. AT&T made the commitment at the outset, we're going to give public safety FirstNet users access to all of our LTE bands, not just Band 14, with priority and preemption capabilities, and that was built in from day one when we launched in 2018 and started adding Band 14 on that existing network. So in certain markets across the country, dense urban markets, there is over 100 megahertz of spectrum, LTE-focused FirstNet spectrum for public safety to leverage with that priority and preemption capability for our primary public safety users. And I think that speaks volumes on that speed to market and getting this network in and operational today. On the FirstNet Authority side, we're working to make sure this network is nationwide and available for public safety during all types of crisis and scenarios, and the larger regional incidents, and even for when responding to significant large-scale emergencies. But we're also very pleased that as Sheriff Stanek and the Advocacy Committee focus on the operational needs of day-to-day use of the network as well. We're seeing today the mobile connectivity and devices that public safety needs to effectively respond to the COVID-19 using the FirstNet network during this national emergency. I'd also highlight for everyone listening, AT&T FirstNet has recently put out a very detailed blog on how the network is being used. And I think I speak for all the staff. We're very honored to see that the communications unit leader from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Tom Ketchy, is quoted in the blog post that's saying FirstNet Network, they are pleased with the quick action, the network performance, and supporting the hundreds of public safety personnel actively engaged in response efforts. In his words, it's been a game changer. So we're very honored with that. You can go to firstnet.com and see this blog post from the FirstNet network. So that's, I'll take any questions on this slide. Otherwise, I'm going to hand over to Mark Goloszewski for the next slide, who will talk about an ecosystems update.
It's Jeff, it's Ed. So just one comment on the deployments. I think Mayor Hughes, raised the possibility that we may have deployables move towards hospitals that may not be on FirstNet yet. I think that what AT&T has demonstrated, there is a process for requesting deployables. They are available and they get to where they need to get to quite quickly. So maybe just take a comment on the process and how one goes about it. Just so that
Absolutely. Yeah, AT&T is the FirstNet support team response operation group has been very active, as you can imagine. They've deployed assets specific for the COVID-19 in several parts of California, several parts of Georgia, New York, and Texas as of our last update. And we know that's a continuing request, and they are addressing those as quickly as possible and have a very thorough process to ensure where the critical communication needs should there be no coverage or other areas where they need to get coverage, those are being requested and delivered for the use by those agencies and FirstNet subscribers. We've also recently been doing direct communication and direct updates with AT&T as they're updating the FirstNet network and extended primary users, getting a lot more requests for those extended primaries that support critical mission critical public safety services in response to this. We're very pleased with how AT&T is performing and keeping not only the FirstNet Authority but everyone involved in this project up to date on what is happening.
Thanks, Jeff.
Great question. Any other questions? If not, I can turn it over to Mark. Mark, take it away.
Thanks, Jeff. Excuse me. I'd like to provide an update on our efforts to build ecosystems that benefit public safety. We're advancing and building innovative ecosystems for public safety through our roadmap efforts, which were mentioned earlier. And nowhere is this more evident than in the expanding apps and devices ecosystems. We've heard from public safety that it's vital to achieve rich and diverse portfolios in these critical technologies and in solutions that support their daily missions. These are two of the key objectives of the vision for public safety's network. We're working closely with AT&T to influence development of apps and specialized devices focused on the needs of public safety, and as a result, we're seeing an expanded, more competitive marketplace that is helping to transform public safety operations. In terms of apps, public safety told us they needed an applications ecosystem focused on their specific needs, and we're pleased with the ongoing progress of the FirstNet Apps catalog. Applications are continuously being approved for the catalog, with over 100 apps in the catalog to date. To ensure that these solutions meet the highest standards demanded by public safety, all apps approved for the catalog go through.
I'm sorry, Mark, for interrupting you. There's someone speaking on the line who might be on another call. If you please could just mute your phone. And, Mark, if you could just add a little more energy. It's a little hard to hear you from time to time.
Certainly, thank you for that. In terms of apps, apps are continuously being approved for the catalog, with over 100 apps in the catalog to date. To ensure these solutions meet the highest standards demanded by public safety, all apps approved for the catalog go through a testing and evaluation process, including rigorous cybersecurity testing, which goes above and beyond what applications normally are required to pass in order for publication in commercial stores. And as you can see from this graphic, there's now a wide diversity of solutions in the catalog that meet various needs of public safety users. FirstNet's enabling legislation called for a list of devices certified for use on public safety's network to be maintained by NIST. Now, that list has continued to grow with the addition of 11 devices since the board last met in December. The total of 174 devices now in the portfolio, the goal of reaching a rich and diverse portfolio as requested by public safety, has become a reality. The portfolio includes the most popular smartphones, of course, but in addition, we're seeing a wide diversity of other device types critical to the public safety mission, including in-vehicle routers, tablets, rugged handhelds, rugged laptops, hotspots, and an increasingly significant number of Internet of Things and other smart devices. At this time, the large majority of devices in the portfolio now support Band 14, as well as obviously the other bands that are made available for public safety use. That's a thumbnail in terms of where we're at in terms of ecosystem building. I'm happy to address any questions the board may have.
Which ones are the most popular apps that are being used?
At this point, those that have the highest use are those that support common operating picture or situational awareness. Those things that allow first responders to share information, whether that's text, video, voice communications, etc., those are have the highest impact in terms of frontline operations.
Great. On the devices, are the high-powered devices going to be approved anytime soon? Do you know?
They are in the process of doing so. We're looking at a first high-powered user equipment, or HPUE, to be available in the next couple of weeks or a month or so. That's going through a certification process right now. And that's going to be that's a unique aspect of our Band 14 license that allows for high-powered user equipment to be on Band 14 spectrum. We expect the early deployment and availability of those types of devices in the marketplace will be likely in an in-vehicle router type of form factor, so that those devices would allow for longer reach and in effect be a way of extending coverage on the uplink and remote or rural areas.
Thank you. Any questions from the board for Mark or Jeff?
Mark, this is Paul Patrick. I have a question. Of the apps that are approved in the catalog, have there been any, or how many have been approved and then you've had to pull out because there were issues or problems that you didn't find at first but happened later on?
At this point, we haven't had to, I'll say, pull an app from the catalog because of issues that were uncovered or discovered after the fact. As we go through there's quite a rigorous vetting process that each of these solutions goes through. I mentioned cybersecurity, but in addition to that, there are also tests for the relevancy, the scalability, the availability capabilities of the solutions, et cetera. At this point, we haven't seen that some fatal flaw, if I can call it that, has made it through the process and stimulated the need to go ahead and pull a listing for a solution.
Thanks, Mark. I think that just helps me and helps to validate how your process is on target in approval. So thank you.
Yeah, for sure. I think one of the things that's always been a goal is that for solutions that do go through the rigors of this process, that public safety can, with confidence, select these solutions for use in their day-to-day operations.
Thanks, Mark. Any other questions? Did I just cut you off, Mark, or are you?
No. If there are no further questions, I'll turn it back to Chairman Cox for any final remarks, or we can pass on to the finance team.
Yeah, I think that's all that we have, and if there's no other questions, I'll turn it back to Chairman Horowitz.
Thank you. So next up is the financial update. And Tip, I don't know if you want to kick it off.
Thank you, Chairman Horowitz. Kim, I'm going to turn over to Kim to walk through the operating budget picture. Then I'll have a couple of comments at the end related to the work of the Finance Committee. But Kim, why don't you go ahead first?
Thank you, Tip. Good day, board members. I want to provide you today with an update on our financial operations. As you can see from the graphs, FirstNet has obligated $35.2 million of our total board-approved budget of $82.1 million fiscal year to date through February. The $82.1 million budget is represented by the green line at the top of the graph. This equates to about a 43% utilization rate through the fiscal year through February, the end of February. Being that we are showing you these numbers as of the end of February, February actually puts us at about 42% through the fiscal year. So FirstNet is tracking very well and consistent with its budget to spend plan for the fiscal year. The next I wanted to share with you is on the leaving you with a good story, actually great news on the financial front on the next slide. And that is for the 7th consecutive year, FirstNet independent auditors Harper, Raines, and Knight have provided us with another clean audit opinion on our fiscal year 2019 financial statements. This also includes no material weaknesses identified, no significant deficiencies, and also no management level findings. So this is a great news story for FirstNet and all those we support, which means that you can rely on our financial statements, and we are good financial stewards of the public tax dollars. I would like to publicly thank my CFO team, Daniela Huckabee Christie, Elsie Whittle, and Bill Philman, who were instrumental in achieving this clean audit opinion with the support of the rest of the CFO team. I would also like to thank our auditors, Harper, Raines, and Knight, for working well with us, as well as personnel from NIST and NTIA, who were all key players and played a critical role involved in this audit. So with that, I will pause to see if there are any questions on the cumulative operations results or our financial statement audit. Hearing none, I'll turn the meeting back over to you to provide the Finance Committee update.
Okay, thank you very much, Kim. Relative to the audit results, congratulations once again to you and your team for having achieved the best possible outcome on the audit. It is important, as you say, that we all remain good stewards of the public funds in this regard, and so I'm very, very pleased that that continues to go well. On the 4th of March, the Finance Committee met and rested, and we actually heard the exit conference. We attended the exit conference with the auditors in person on that. And to the extent that auditors are at all demonstrative, they were clearly complimentary of the work of the team, and we were pleased to see that. In addition to the discussion of the audit during that meeting, we took a look at some of the execution issues, and as Kim has shared with you, we're executing the budget pretty much according to plan. To the extent that there is any significant variance at all, it typically has to do with personnel costs, and that in turn is sort of driven by some of the challenges associated with the federal hiring process. With the help of Lisa Casillas, I think we are getting a better handle on that. As of the 20th of February, we still had 22 openings, but we're working on those, and we have the packages put together. And I am pleased to see that this is a big management emphasis area, and I think that we'll probably close the gap on execution a little bit before the end of the year. But in any case, I think we're doing about as well as we can when it comes to managing the financial variances caused by the lower headcount than we assumed when we built the budget. We also looked in the course of the meeting at the budget formulation process for FY20, and in particular, how we're doing relative to the schedule. We are on schedule to get the budget done on time, and we expect to take a look at that final budget in the Finance Committee before the end of July. By mid-August, that should go to the board for final approval. So we're on schedule there. We also did a brief review of the status of both our current investments and our investment planning process. This is an area that we're going to continue to emphasize. The status of the current investments we've already talked about briefly in this meeting, and there's really no change to report there. But the need to have a documented, well-understood, rigorous model for considering, vetting, and approving investments will only increase in the future. as we have more and more funds flowing into the investment account. We took a look at that model and the development of that model in the course of the meeting, and it is, I think, very helpful when we talk to our counterparts at the Department of Commerce and other places in the federal government and to others who are interested in how we're going to invest these funds. The model is easy to understand, and I think it's well thought out, and we're pleased to see that now has been well documented. We also looked at one or two other minor issues, but they are, in terms of the role of the Finance Committee, not at all unimportant. Things like internal review of the way we manage our purchase cards. Excuse me. Doesn't seem like much, but this is an area that causes a lot of organizations a lot of headaches. We did find in our internal review some opportunities for administrative improvements, but nothing material and no evidence of misuse or fraud or anything like that. But you really can't be too careful on the management of these, so I was pleased to see that internal review has been concluded and I think is continuing to provide the appropriate level of oversight. And then the final issue that I'll talk about today is we took a look at what we're calling the Emerging Priorities Fund. As everyone is aware, the investment decision-making process can be lengthy, and we don't want to work investment ideas one at a time. So one of the things that we asked the organization to do, and the Finance Committee the finance team played an important role in this, is to help us understand what is out there in the investment consideration pipeline, so we don't have to wait until the very end to find out what's coming next, but instead we'll have some visibility into the things that we're looking at, even though they may be in an early pre-decisional stage. And so that Emerging Priorities Fund that's the purpose of that, and I'm glad to see that that is continuing to evolve. I think it'll be very helpful to the board, and we'll be looking at that in subsequent meetings, I think, so that people can get better visibility into what's coming after the current investments are more formally into the acquisition process. So with that, I'll pause and ask if any of the board members or other participants in the meeting have any questions. Hearing none, I'll turn it back over to Chairman.
Tip?
Yes.
Yeah, this is Paul Patrick. I just want to take a moment to say what a pleasure it is to be on the Finance Committee, and Kim and all of her staff and you do an excellent job, and just wanted to not leave this portion without saying thank you for all you do.
Well, thank you for your involvement also, Paul.
Thanks, Kim, and thanks, Tip. And Paul, be careful of what you wish for. You might be on that committee forever. So
that's fine with me.
I would like to next turn over the meeting to our new CEO, Ed Parkinson, and perhaps you can provide us with some closing remarks, and then I'll have one statement at the end before we adjourn.
Thank you, Ed. I appreciate that. And I'd just like to thank the board, the Department of Commerce and Public Safety, and the whole team at FirstNet for the confidence that everyone's shown in me to giving me this wonderful opportunity. I certainly will be been working very hard. We'll redouble my efforts to make sure that we do everything we possibly can to provide the United States' only dedicated public safety network at the heights of its capabilities for public safety. And I think the commitment that the team has shown, not only at the FirstNet Authority but at AT&T, is reflected in the coordination and the, frankly, the disciplined response that we've been able to show over the past 10 or so days in response to the coronavirus. I'd like to applaud AT&T for the work that they've been doing on the front end when the virus started hitting our shores, and also the information flow, not only pushing information out to public safety, but just as important, receiving information in. And for folks listening, to echo Jeff Bratcher's comments, go to FirstNet.com. There's a fantastic resource there, as well as the FirstNet support line for public safety users who are FirstNet subscribers or who wish to become FirstNet subscribers. There's a tremendous amount of information and able to support the incredible work that our nation's first responders are doing, especially in this time, but every single day. In particular, I'd again like to echo the comments that Ed, you made at the beginning. My thanks to Jim Gwynn and the entire CIO team from the FirstNet Authority. We are up and running. We are an organization that is built to telework, that is built to work remotely. We travel the country. We engage with public safety all the time. And to really continue to serve public safety in this period in which we find ourselves as a society is, I think, a fantastic reflection on the dedication of the FirstNet Authority team, from Dave Buchanan's Public Safety Advocacy team, Kim's financial team, and congratulations again to her and the team for the fantastic work regarding the audit and the successful work we've done there. But the board and our internal focus admin team, there are a lot of unsung heroes that provide the necessary oversight in holding AT&T's feet to the fire, but also in providing public safety information and the dedicated service that we do provide. There's a lot of unsung heroes out there, and I just hope that everyone knows who you are, and we really do thank you. In terms of where we stand as an organization, we're very enthusiastic and very encouraged by where we sit right now. We obviously have a lot of tremendous work ahead of us, and we're excited to do it. We're excited to engage with public safety to make sure that we provide the very best service we possibly can, and to ensure that your voices are always heard. This is public safety's network. It's not the FirstNet Authorities. It's certainly not AT&T. This is public safety's network. And we will continue to be here for public safety throughout the coronavirus process and situation in which we find ourselves, but beyond, because this isn't just for uses during emergencies. This is a service that public safety can use 24/7, 365. And so you have the FirstNet Authority's dedication to continuing to serve public safety. My thanks, too, to Jeff Bratcher for all the amazing support and work that he's done over the last 7 or 8 months. He's been with the organization from the beginning, so he knows it just as well as I do, and he's been a tremendous partner to have in this period, and I look forward to working with him continuing in the future. Also to the Deputy CEO, Lisa Casillas. She's come in at the beginning of the year and has just been a huge, huge asset to the organization, and one that we're incredibly lucky to have her on board. We're really excited about where we're going as an organization in the future. So with that, I thank, again, the board for this amazing opportunity, and I look forward to working with everyone who's listening in and across the United States for the work that we're doing. It's a tremendous opportunity and something that we don't take lightly. So thank you, Ed.
Thank you, Ed. And are there any questions or comments for Ed or anyone else by the board? Okay, so I just have a thought, kind of in the rule of seven being things need to be repeated 7 times to really be embedded in one's memory. I'm going to restate some things that have been stated before. The need of FirstNet was driven home by the events of 9/11. And through our contract with our partner with AT&T, the network designated for public safety is being built out and in operations today. The FirstNet network has been demonstrating its capabilities on local and regional instances, and however, with this pandemic, we now have a national issue involving all 56 states and territories. The FirstNet broadband network is the nation's strategic communications network dedicated to public safety. Our advocacy message to public safety must be, if you have coverage available, there is no excuse not to be on FirstNet. These are my words. Priority, preemption, information security, and application ecosystem are there just for starters. And with that, I just would like to ask for a motion to adjourn the meeting. Our next meeting thus far is going to be scheduled in June. So far it is in Austin, subject to change. But with that, may I please ask for a motion to adjourn?
Tip, I move to adjourn.
Thank you. Second?
A second.
Thank you, Karima. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. Thank you. Opposed, say nay. Hearing none, with that, the meeting is adjourned, and thank you very much for all your dedication and hard work and all the work that goes into putting these together and the jobs you do every day. Everyone stay healthy and safe. Take care.
That concludes today's conference. Thank you for participating. You may disconnect at this time.